Hi, I'm Rex Black, President of RBCS. Welcome to the RBCS YouTube channel. Hey, I hope you enjoy all these free resources that are available here. And do us one favor. We need to keep the lights on and we need your help to do that. So, when you need testing and quality related services, training, consulting, expert services, you name it, let us be one of the bidders on that next job. We don't expect to get all of your business, but we'd like to get a chance. Thanks and enjoy the shows.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
On behalf of RBCS, RBCS New Zealand, RBCS Australia, and Software TestWorks, we welcome everyone today to this webinar on hiring great testers. I'm Rex Black, President of RBCS, a worldwide testing and quality assurance firm serving clients ranging from small startups to Fortune 20 global enterprises. Since 1994, RBCS has been both a pioneer and leader in quality hardware and software testing. RBCS has offices in the United States, New Zealand, Australia, and Sri Lanka, with partners around the world. RBCS delivers insight and confidence to our clients, helping them get quality software and hardware products to market on time and with a measurable return on investment. RBCS has a team of international consultants that deliver customized training, consulting, and outsourcing services for companies that are looking to improve their test and quality assurance practices. RBCS has helped hundreds of companies reduce development and support costs while assuring the best quality products are delivered to customers. I am the author of Pragmatic Software Testing, Advanced Software Testing Volumes 1, 2, and very soon Volume 3 on technical test analysis, Foundations of Software Testing, Critical Testing Processes, and Managing the Testing Process. I hold a degree in Computer Science and Engineering from UCLA. And I'm past president of the International Software Testing Qualifications Board and the American Software Testing Qualifications Board. Now, before we start the presentation, a couple housekeeping notes. If you have any questions during the course of the webinar, feel free to submit them at any time via your webinar interface. There's a questions panel that you will be able to see on your screen. So you can put those in there at any time. I will look at them at the end, so don't worry that I won't be interrupting me or popping up on them in the middle of the presentation. If you need copies of this presentation, it is posted. It is on the basic library page at www.rbcs-us.com. If you have any problems with the audio or visual components, get in touch with GoToWebinar support. The usual problem, of course, is some sort of codec or security issue, which you should be already aware of if you have that problem, because it pretty much pops up right away. But if you can't get to the webinar online, or if you have some unreliable connection issues, then go ahead and download the slides. As I said, basic library page, which is on the resources tab at rbcs-us.com, and use the telephone to connect, not voice over IP. So, down to business. I am back in the United States after being on the road for a month. I just got in from Malaysia, a 36-hour flight yesterday. So if it sounds like I have no idea what time zone I'm in, that's exactly right. Anyway, today we're going to talk about hiring great testers. And so I've been doing a lot of work internationally lately. I've counted it up, and over the last 12 months, I think I've been in like 15 countries, as well as locations around North America. And what we seem to be seeing pretty universally is a recovery of the economy, and thus recovery from the downsizing that was so prevalent, and then turnaround to the point where we're actually starting to hire people and seeing our clients do that. And given that over 400 people registered for the 2 sessions of this webinar, it sounds like that applies to a lot of you out there. So in this presentation, I'm going to try to discuss some important things to do and to think about as you hire your teams. And as I said, I'm looking forward to getting questions from you at any time, which I will address at the end. Okay. to advance. Yeah, there we go. Okay, now just to get us off here, frame some questions to try to address, and again, happy to take other questions that relevant to hiring that you think of. So I've built this webinar out of pieces of Managing the Testing Process 3rd edition, which came out last year-ish, I think, at some point early last year. And that was an update to the 2nd edition, of course, which was an update to the 1st edition. That book's been around for almost 12 years now. And one of the things that I talk about in that book and that we present for clients around the world when we do the course based on the book is this whole central question of good testers. You know, how do we build the best possible testing team? Now, part of this, of course, is team development after they've been hired, but you know, you also have to think that the people that you hire are the raw material, if you will, with which you're going to build the team. And so, you know, you certainly want to get off to the right start in the sense of the hiring the people who are going to be the best possible fit in your organization, and who are going to bring something to the team, as well as be, you know, above and beyond potential, I guess, would be the way to look at it. You want to hire people that have got great potential, of course, but you also want to hire people that bring something immediately to the team. So how do we do that? You know, how do we find these people? How do we bring them on board? How do we avoid making hiring mistakes? You know, certainly a pertinent thing to think about here is the figure from Tom DeMarco and Tim Lister's book, People, where they talk about the difference between the best possible employee and a hiring mistake. You know, the person that you shouldn't have really hired being about 10 times in any sort of metric of effectiveness that you would look at. So, you know, if you hire people that are really good and you know they're the right fit in many ways, that you can expect to really have order of magnitude more effective and efficient test teams. And you know, good economy, bad economy, that's always a good thing, is to have teams that can get more done in less time with less resource. So we need to look at attributes, personality, as well as skills. We've got to look at the kind of skills that we need our testers to have. We have to do this in a way that is measurable somehow. I mean, we talk about skills, and you know, there's a lot of sort of squishiness, I'm afraid, in a lot of the discussions about skills. And what I'm going to encourage you to do in this presentation is to go beyond the subjectivity and the squishiness and get this more properly quantified, if you will. And I'll show you how to do that. And you know, once you understand these areas of skills and you know what you need, attitudes, and so forth, then it's a matter of execution, in the sense of you've got to go out and interview people and make a decision. You know, you've got 10 requisitions open or 1 requisition open, whatever it may be. You're going to hire that number of people, but you're going to talk to a lot more people. You're going to consider a lot more people, and you don't want to be ground down by the process, right? And you end up at the end going, oh, I'm not really sure that any of these guys are going to be a fit, but I'm just desperate, and I've got to have somebody. You know, so you make a hiring decision, and you know, those kind of decisions often turn out to be a mistake. So I mean, how do we make this process effective in the sense that we end up hiring the right person, but also efficient in the sense that we don't get ground down by it? So those are some things we'll look at here. Okay, so let's start with attitude. Let's start with the outlooks that you want in a tester. Now, a phrase that I've been using for years is this one: professional pessimism. A good tester is confident in their ability to find problems, and that, you know, that they have. It's often described as a negative viewpoint on the product, but that's not really right, because negative implies that it's unrealistically so, or unremittingly negative and unable to accept the good realities as well as the bad ones. And that's not really what we're talking about here with professional pessimism. It's an understanding of the realities of software engineering and computing, and just saying, we know there are bugs, and we know that there are risks. We know that there are things that could go wrong, and we need to face those things squarely and manage them without any undue optimism, which of course is the bane of software engineering. I mean, if you look at projects gone awry, and I think back to projects I've been on that did not go well, I think some amount of unwarranted optimism amongst the management team and the project participants themselves was always one of the causes of that. So the testers bring a tempering element to that of the I hesitate to use the word conscience of the project, but there is that element of the people that are there to keep us grounded to the quality realities of software, and as well as being mindful of its wonderful potentials. Now, I want to stress that this is not an adversarial thing, and it is not a license to offend people. You want to make sure that the testers you hire have that outlook, but at the same time know how to deliver the message in a way that does not offend people and does not rub people the wrong way. I've interviewed testers who indicated that they had the exact opposite perspective. Like they got no pleasure in life greater than the pleasure of watching a developer's face fall when confronting him or her with horrible news about something they just built. And that's just the wrong person to have on the team. And I've just, in doing assessments with clients and working with clients, I have not ever seen that kind of attitude be something that contributed to success. On the contrary, it was a source of dissension and friction, which then led to ineffectiveness, right? Because you start having conflict within the team, and people, all of the interactions become about the conflict. They're no longer about the project. It's like people trying to shoot holes under somebody else's feet, even though everybody's in the same boat. And it's very counterproductive. We've seen it in a number of situations. So something to think about. Build this within your team, and of course during the interviewing process, be absolutely sure that you're hiring somebody who is a professional pessimist, not somebody who's going to act personally or with malice. Now, another thing that you want to look for in a tester, a good tester is curious. A good tester, when they see something weird happen, says, that's weird. I'm going to dig into that a little bit. They know when to deviate from a written test script and go off and look at things, even things that aren't explicitly specified in the script or that are not defined as expected results to check. They still have that essential element of curiosity where they go, okay, I'll take a look at that. And of course, it's essential if you're going to do any sort of exploratory or other kind of experience-based testing, like using Whitaker's attacks technique or something like that, because the tester is to a great extent guided by this curiosity and those experience-based techniques, and without the proper degree of curiosity will not go in the right places. That said, it does need to be balanced. The tendency to go off and get all wound around things that are not really important is something that you have to really watch out for. I mean, I had a tester once tell me that he was working on a bug report related to the background color of a screen being the wrong shade of blue. And when I asked him for more details, he said, well, it's supposed to be dark blue, but it's more of a sky blue. And this application that we were testing had no inherent ability to control background color. So I said, that sounds a lot to me like it's either a driver problem or you've got a failing video adapter, and you should just escalate that up to tech support, people who supported our test environments. And then I said, how long have you spent on researching this bug? He said 4 hours. It was ridiculous. And this guy was a good guy. He was a good tester in a lot of ways. He very good rapport with the developers. Attitude-wise, he's a very good guy and technically very qualified. But he could not differentiate between trivialities and critical things. And you can take someone like that and you can use them to run tightly written scripts, or you can use them as an automator or something like that, but they just tend to just wander off. This attention to detail or something like that is just not quite there. The ability to refocus themselves. So you want to watch out for this too. You want people who they're curious, they wonder about things, but at the same time they know when to put that curiosity aside and say, this is one of the mysteries not worth solving. Which kind of brings us to this next issue of focus as a qualifying personality trait. Focus is tough, because you gotta constantly be trying to move forward, which involves getting actual work done. But then at the same time, periodically you need to ask yourself, well, what, given everything that I know right now, what is the right thing to do next? And it's not always the thing that's next on the task list. If you manage test teams like I do, you during test execution or even prior to that, you're handing out tasks to people and you're checking in with them periodically to make sure that those tasks are moving forward. Now, I expect people that work for me to be, at least the more senior people that I would consider as actual test engineers, not just test technicians, but I would expect those people to be able to look at a situation and understand that the situation had evolved, and perhaps on their own initiative with a email to me or some later check-in to me, modify their task list or priorities to focus on things that are more important immediately. So that's something that you want to look at. Now, of course, you have, as a manager, you have to give clear direction. I've known some managers that were, they're good guys, good men and women, and they were, their people liked them, but they were just, I don't know, their way of communicating was just inscrutable. It's like you just could not figure out what exactly it was that they were saying. This is the overall objective, right? Because there's the objectives of the project. There's what you're trying to accomplish, and then there's the tasks that you're going to carry out to do that. And you should not mistake the task for the objective. But in order for people to be able to focus, they need you as a manager, assuming you are a manager, to give them clear understanding of what the objectives are. And the thing to watch out for is in terms of the focus is, again, as I was just mentioning the previous slide, the issue of distraction. People who are easily distracted go off and spend 4 hours researching some sort of trivial bug. Also, just people who, are too focused for too long, I guess, who don't every now and then back away from things and go, have I maybe just been doing this long enough and maybe I should move on to something else? I'll try to illustrate this with an anecdote. We had a project running once, years ago when I was a test manager on an operating system project, and we had this guy, this tester, very dedicated tester, good guy for the most part. So I'm going to bring up one bad thing he did, and this is out of a million things that he did that were great. But anyway, this guy, on it one Saturday morning, this gives you an indication of how the project was going. One Saturday morning, he had found some sort of bug, and he was trying to isolate this bug. And so I come in there, and it's around, 11 o'clock or something. I come into the test lab, and he's there. He's working on this bug report, and he's plowing through this octal dump of the core dump that had happened. The operating system had crashed. So he's there, he's looking at it, and the two system administrators are there. Now, the two system administrators, the reason they're there on Saturday is that they are supposed to install the latest release starting Saturday morning. And it pretty much takes all weekend to get it done and check it out and so forth, so that by Monday morning you can have confidence that the test team that's coming in on Monday morning, in this case, all 18 of them, would be able to proceed and do some testing. They wouldn't be sitting there waiting for hours, because I mean, if you have a team that size and you lose a whole morning, you're talking about like 2-person weeks of lost effort, basically, if they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs. So it's it's a major risk. And anyway, so here's this guy sitting there looking at this bug report, or looking at this octal dump, working on this bug report. Here are the two system administrators who are kibitzing with him and talking about stuff, and I'm sure it was important stuff. But then, so I asked the guy, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm working on a bug report." And I mean, how long have you been working on it? Well, pretty much all morning. And then so I said, "So where are we on the install?" I said to the two system administrators, and they're like, "Well, we haven't started yet because we're waiting for them to get finished." And I said, "Well, he's working on one computer. There are a number of other computers in this test network. Don't you think we ought to get started installing those so that we're ready to go on Monday?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, right, we should do that." So, this guy was running down the rabbit path, if you will, after this bug, and it was an important bug. I'm not questioning his need to work on that. But the problem was that he had pulled these other guys in, and they'd allowed themselves to get pulled in, and it was creating a risk, significant project risk, that we were going to lose, as I said, potentially 2-person weeks of effort on a Monday morning when everybody came in and they were sitting around waiting for this environment to be set up. So, these are the kinds of things that you want to look at. You want to look at, people's judgment, their ability to focus effectively, things to explore when you're considering a tester. Okay, so attitude. Attitude's important. Now let's move on to skills, because that's critical too. We got to get someone with the right attitude, but we also get somebody that's got the right skills when we're hiring. Now, let me say some skills that are, I think, completely obvious, but might potentially be overlooked. A good tester needs to know how to read and write. Now, I'm not being sarcastic with this, because I actually mean something a little bit more in-depth, more intensive than what you might need for other individual contributor positions or manager positions in a software team. So when I'm hiring a tester, I expect them to be able to read a requirement specification or a design specification with an eye to detail that goes beyond what a business analyst, a requirements engineer, or a developer might have. So this would include things like noticing inconsistencies between statements on completely different pages in the same document, or indeed different documents that are related. So, noticing that there's an inconsistency between a high-level design specification and a business requirement specification. That's the kind of thing that I would expect a tester to be able to do. I expect them to be able to carefully read emails and respond appropriately to them. I expect them to be able to read and follow test cases, and when they deviate from test cases, be able to document that they did that. They should, of course, be able to write a test case. They should be able to write a good bug report, and that's a whole separate topic, which I believe I've discussed in a previous webinar. If not, I'll do it in a subsequent one. Creating of other test documentation, they should know what needs to be written down and what doesn't need to be written down. I don't expect testers to spend all of their time writing documentation. They should write effective documents, short, targeted, concise kind of things. Now, this reading and writing capabilities, I want to point out this is not necessarily I'm not insisting on perfect English here, assuming that your project team uses English or whatever the project language is. This is not about being, Gustave Flaubert here and picking the exact right word on a sentence, but I do want people to be able to pick words that are non-inflammatory when they're writing emails and bug reports. Of course, I want them to be precise in terms of things where precision matters, like descriptions of failure symptoms and so forth. Those are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. Now, in some cases, you have a need for statistics or other mathematical knowledge, though that's usually confined to a few narrow types of testing positions like reliability testing and performance testing and so forth. I'm going to look for that. But I think generally we can say above and beyond basic professional attributes like reading and writing, we also want to look at things like technology skills, project skills, and testing skills. So by technology, I mean an understanding of programming languages and the underlying technologies with which the application under test is being built, which many times is going to include these days networking and HTML and web and those sort of things. Now, I don't necessarily expect the tester to be as technical in their knowledge as a programmer, but I do have to say that with the rise of Agile and other just the increasing complexity even on traditional lifecycle models, it is making it more and more important that testers be more technical. So, I mean, we've just come out with our Advanced Technical Test Analyst course, and we're getting a huge response to that. So this is clearly a lot of interest here about being more technical. So I would encourage you as a manager to, if your team is weak technically, and I'll show you in a minute how you would know, look to hire people that fill that gap, because this seems to be a pretty common problem in a lot of our organizations that are doing their IT organizations. They're building software for their own purposes. The other thing is that project-related and application-related, application domain knowledge is also an important skill area. So, if you're in banking, then you should know about banking, right? Now, I'm not necessarily saying that everybody should be a banker if they're working in a bank as a software tester, but they should have, again, some amount of innate curiosity about the business that they're in, such that they educate themselves about the business that they're in, and that they are able to converse intelligently with business people. That they understand what the business problem is that's to be solved. So, that's I would encourage you as a manager to look at that too. That this is an area that's traditionally weak in shops that are building software for sale or systems for sale. They don't necessarily understand what their users are going to do with it. They have too much of a technical outlook and not enough of an application domain outlook. So those two things very much need to be in balance, and in many organizations they are not. They're too heavy on one side or the other. So this is a classic team organizational mistake that we see with clients around the world, and I'd encourage you to really take a look at this. And again, I'm going to show you in a minute how you would do that. But make sure that these things are in balance. And then last, of course, we would expect the tester to have skills specific to testing. So they should be able to write and follow test scripts. They should be able to do exploratory testing using techniques like error guessing or Whitaker's attacks techniques, those sort of things. If there's automation involved in your team, then that affects the testing skills required. Now, if you're using proper keyword-driven architectures, you don't have to have everybody able to write automated test scripts, but you need to have people understanding how they work and able to use them. Okay, so how do we do this? We can identify a lot of skills, but so how are we going to go about doing this properly? Well, okay, so first understand, again, that we have these three areas of skill, application domain, testing, and technology. So what we're going to do is we're going to create something that's called a skills assessment worksheet or skills inventory. It goes by different names. It's a human resource management technique. I can't claim to have created this, but you're going to do a task analysis. That's the starting point for this. Now, a task analysis is a fancy way of saying that you're going to go through and you're going to look at what your testers actually do. So let's say you got a work breakdown structure for a previous project. You've done a Microsoft project or some similar kind of tool. You had a work breakdown structure. You got a test plan, and maybe some other information from past projects. You're going to sit down. You're going to analyze this historical information about what your testers actually do. And see, right here, this is an important point. This needs to be reality-based. All too often, what we see are these job descriptions that look as if they were created by somebody who sat in a room and had a sort of blue sky conversation with themselves about what would the perfect tester be like. If the perfect tester wandered into my office right now, how would I recognize her or him? That's just not connected to reality. Okay, what you got to do is look at what do your team actually do. Okay, so you do this task analysis, and then so having gone through these tasks, as you go through them, for each task you say, what skills would tester need to have in order to be able to competently carry out this task? And that's going to spin out this list of the critical skills that you need in your team, that you actually need, right? This is not hypothetical. It's not like, oh, I'd really like somebody who could discuss, ancient English literature with me, because we don't have enough conversation about Chaucer in our organization. I mean, that's not connected to something that somebody actually needs to do, right? And so the skills inventory that you're going to create through this task analysis is going to talk about what people actually do. All right, now here's a hypothetical. This spreadsheet, by the way, is out on the RBCS on the Resources tab. It's either in the Basic or the Advanced library. If you look at test team process, you'll find it out there on one of those two locations. You can download it. Now, let me explain to you how this thing works. Looks like it's probably time for a magic highlighter here too, because I think that's going to help you guys follow this, because this is pretty dense information-wise. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to point out here, well, we've got down column A here, this column here. This is where the skills are going to go. Now we're going to start with general qualifications, but we're going to have a page each. Here you see this is specific testing skills, and then we have domain knowledge, and then we have technical expertise. So I use the three groups here to show the different skills areas. Now let me go back to this first page here, and I'm sorry there's going to be some jumping around, and I'll try not to lose you guys. I'm going to keep track of whether your screens have refreshed, so be able to see if you're caught up. Okay, so what we're going to do is for each skill, having identified it, we're going to talk about the level of skill that would be required based on position. Okay, so I've defined in this organization, we've got the test technician, that's the TT. So this is the man or woman whose job it is to pretty much just execute tests, follow written scripts, kick off automated tests, file bug reports, and so forth. This is sort of the entry level. This goes by different names in different organizations. You get test specialist and junior test engineer and so forth. Call it whatever you want. This is the individual contributor level, entry level. And then we've got the automation test engineer, and we've got the manual test engineer, and then those are the guys who are responsible for creating either the automated test systems, doing the actual automation. The manual testers are the ones who are responsible for creating the tests that would be run manually. And also, of course, if you've got keyword-driven automation, then they would be creating tests that would use that. Use the automated framework, but would not necessarily have that ability to build the framework. Okay, so based on position, what we're going to do is we're going to say what level of skill is required. Now, I'm using a simple 4-point scale that you see across the top here. Okay. Now, what we've got is 0, which means the person knows nothing about the topic, and if we're talking about hypotheticals, we're talking about needs to know nothing about it. 1 is some knowledge. Now, a person with a none or with a 1 would be able to execute tasks that require the skill, but they would need to have someone around that they could ask questions of. They have some basic knowledge of the skill under consideration. And then we have the 2, which is the knowledgeable, and so that's somebody who is competent in doing tasks that require that skill, usually without any supervision or assistance. Though every now and then they get stuck and might need to ask questions. And then 3 is the expert. This is the person who would be asked basically if there were questions. So that person would be completely able to do things on their own. Now, also, I want to point out here we got a required versus desirable, and this is really important. Distinguish between required and desirable, because we see a lot of job descriptions, a lot of hiring process that does not make this distinction, and the bar is set so ridiculously high by the inclusion of desirable things under the category of required that competent, qualified people who could actually do the work don't apply for the job because they say, well, I don't have that. And at the same time, other people look at those job descriptions and go, nobody has that. I'm as good a fit for this job description as anybody else in this universe because it doesn't describe any living human being, and so I'm going to go ahead and apply. And thus, you're going to deprive yourself of applicants who are qualified, and at the same time force yourself to wade through a lot of applicants that are not. So distinguish between the required and the desired here. This is going to feed into your job description when you go to hire. Okay, now, for the most part, these skills are rated on that 0 through 4 scale. Though I do want to point out that the work experience category is done in years rather than on that 0 through 3. Excuse me, I said 0 through 4 a minute ago. 0 through 3, I meant to say. So here we've defined, in these columns, B, C, and D columns, we've defined the hypotheticals that we say, okay, we're hiring somebody, this is what we want, all right? And then what we've done here in the columns E through I is we've assessed the current team. We've rated the current team's capabilities. Not with an eye to measuring them against the ideals. Okay, this is not a firing technique that I'm talking about here. You're going to go, oh, well, we've determined based on skills analysis that you're incompetent, Bob, so you're fired. You know, your team is what it is at this point, and you know, unless there are major competence issues that are jumping out at you based on work not getting done, I'm not saying that you should use this to fire, though you definitely should use this to guide your training process. Okay, so, and more on training, of course, in a minute. Now, so having done this analysis, we can then go through and we can look at 2 things, team minimums and team averages. Now, pardon me, I talked about test team organizational options in a previous webinar, so I'm not going to go back and repeat what I went over there. If you are wondering about this, how test organizational options intersect with skills, I'd encourage you to go listen to that recorded webinar, which is available out on the digital library. But the short version is that if you are trying to create a team of generalists, in other words, people where there are some defined positions, but for the most part you want people to be able to do the jobs that come along, then you want to try to have the team average skill for each of these critical skills. Because remember, this is based on a task analysis, so these are things that people actually need. You want to have the team average around 2 on the critical skills. And you also want to look at the minimums, because if you've got minimums that are that include zeros, you've got at least one person on the team who cannot do some tasks that come along, and that's something you need to look at. Now, if those tasks are sophisticated, things like creating automated keyword-driven frameworks, then okay, no big deal there. That's something you're going to call on specific people to do. But if if we're talking about something like writing a bug report, no, I mean, this is a universal skill, and so any of those things that are universally applicable, of course, the team minimum of 0 is indicative of a significant problem. So you want to go through and look at those. You want to look and see if you've got those averages below 2 and the minimums of 0, and then based on that, you can identify where your team is weak. Now, I don't want to crawl through each one of these things, but as you can see here, we've got this team. We can identify in terms of domain for this hypothetical team doing word processor testing some weaknesses in terms of things like publishing and binding, say. Okay, so that's how you're gonna do that. You're gonna go through, you look at those spots, and go, all right, now here's where I'm strong, here's where I'm weak, and then based on that, you've now identified the gaps in your team, and that should inform your hiring process. Okay, you want to hire people that are going to fill the gaps. All right, now college education. Do you want to include college education as a requirement? Well, geez, I mean, people are all over the map on this, and they tend to have very strong feelings about it too, which is interesting. So if we ask in a class, do you require your software engineers or your test engineers, excuse me, to have a college degree? We'll have people arguing vigorously both for and against that. So I think a jury is out, as the cliche goes. There is not an industry consensus on this, and I think on a case-by-case basis, people can make strong, defensible cases that it either is required or is not required. So I would encourage you to think about that. And also, if you do think that it's required or even desirable, think about what kind of degree you want to see someone have. Now, this sort of gets off into philosophy, and I don't want to get into the debate that some people might have over this about, well, liberal arts education is about making you think, and you really shouldn't come out with a specific set of skills. It's about expanding your mind and so forth. Yeah, okay, and I've heard it, and then I know that there are some of you out there probably who believe that and will advocate that. I don't want to argue it with you, but if you believe that, then you do need to be able to make a case to management that this is why I'm hiring somebody who got a degree that's completely unrelated to software engineering or to the business domain. Now, I think if we start asking for specific business domain or software engineering degrees from people, that becomes much more defensible, both to management and also from a being in the United States. I mean, from a wrongful non-hire lawsuit perspective, and if you have to remember that if you fail to hire somebody who believes that they were qualified, and your job description is one that they can attack, if you will, in a lawsuit, that can happen. That's a risk. So, think long and hard about this. Don't just throw something in there because it's the easy answer, though. We see this a lot where people go, okay, well, programmers are required to have a 4-year college degree in software engineering, so that's what we're going to require for the testers. Boom, done. Think about this a little more. I mean, one of our clients, for example, is oil exploration software, and they require degrees of their testers. Now, the developers have to have, for the most part, software engineering degrees, but their test manager will not hire testers who have software engineering degrees. They only hire people with degrees that are pertinent to the oil business. And the explanation that I got, this is something that's been clearly and carefully thought out, was, I can teach them, we can teach them the technology that they need to know in the space of a few months, and I can make up for that. But what I can't make up for is a lack of understanding of how to do oil exploration, and that's something that you're going to have to get from a 4-year degree. So do think about this. Consider this topic, and whatever answer you come up with, be ready to explain it, articulate it. If you're coming down on the side of, I want a liberal arts degree, I want somebody who knows how to think, then again, that's fine. But be aware that there are skeptics about that argument out there, and I'm not the only one of them. And you'll have to explain it to people. Now, also, in addition to the degree, you might say, well, what training? I mean, do I want somebody who's taken training before? And RBCS, part of what we do is sell training, of course. So we're big fans of people who take training courses. But I mean, it's somebody who presents you with a page-long list of all the trainings they got, the certifications that they got, and stuff. I mean, the pertinent question asked there is, okay, great. So you got this training. Show me how that connected to something that you did at work. Because if you go off and you get training and then you don't actually put that to work pretty much immediately, like within I'd say 30 to 90 days of learning a skill in a classroom. And I'm going to use the term classroom here very broadly to include e-learning as well. But I'd say within 30 to 90 days of learning a skill on a sort of theoretical basis, if you have not applied that to solving actual business problems, actual problems of testing, you probably lost most of it. So, yeah, you want people who got training, but you also want to make sure that that training was targeted at what they really need to do and what they really need to know, and that they applied that in the real world on their job. As I said, RBCS, we're a training company. We love our clients. We love all of our clients. But that we want people to get trained, but we also want that to have an effect. One of the things that I often tell attendees of the training courses is, our objectives in this course are pretty ambitious, because I'll say, okay, we want you to enjoy the course, and if there's a certification exam, we definitely want all of you to pass the exam. But above and beyond that, we want to change the way you work for the rest of your career. And I'll come out and tell people at the beginning of the class, I will have succeeded in this class, from my point of view, if one of the things that happens is that every one of you goes back to work and starts doing something differently and becomes more effective and more efficient right away. And if that is not true for every one of you, then this class has not been as effective as it should. So, look at that. I mean, ask people that, pardon me, ask people that question in the interview. What did you learn from this course that changed the way that you work for the rest of your life? And that kind of puts them on the spot, and it might be tough for them to come up with an immediate answer to it, but I think it's a fair question to ask. What did you learn from this course that changed the way you work? Okay, so on that same note, certification. Now, you guys all know, based on my bio that I gave you, that I'm a believer in this, so not really want to debate the value of certification per se. I mean, that can be a separate webinar. We can have a separate discussion about that. In fact, I believe there is one scheduled for next year. But assuming that you agree with me that certification of testers as testers, and I'm talking here about tester skill certification, not technical certifications like Cisco certifications, for example. But assuming that you agree with me that certifying testers as testers on their skills as testers is something that's valuable, then you need to select a program to look at. Now, your choice. You can say, I want everybody to be ISTQB certified, or everybody to be X certified, where X is one of the choices shown here on this slide. And the defense of that is, I want everybody to have the same certification, is that there is a terminology aspect of the certifications, that people learn a particular glossary and a set of concepts with particular words around those concepts. And that's something that's going to make, if everybody's got the same terminology, that's going to make the team more effective. It's going to be easier for them to work together. And that's certainly true. That said, I don't think it's that hard to reprogram people's terminologies. I mean, we see different terminologies in use with our clients around the world, and you figure it out pretty quickly. Excuse me. So I'd say personally, and again, there's a defensible argument to be made for the other side here, but I would say personally that any of these certifications has value, provided that you can, again, ask the person to explain to you how some skill that they acquired as part of getting the certification changed the way that they work. It made them a more effective and efficient tester. And if they can't answer that question, then it could well be the terminology was really all they got out of it, and that's not so good. Now, we are very careful in our certification courses, both live and online, to include very significant hands-on elements with realistic projects as case studies to try to ensure that knowledge transfer occurs. There are out there a lot of what I derisively refer to as brain cram courses that are designed to just cram your brain full of the terminology and concepts, give you no stepping stones to how to apply that in the real world, but get you through the exam. And since there are such courses out there, and some of them are quite commercially successful, offered by competitors of ours, and I'm assuming that you're going to run into some number of people that have a certification that took one of these brain cramp courses to get it. And some skepticism on your part is appropriate. Now, if you're going to select certifications and you want to say, well, I want to evaluate the value of the certification is, keep in mind that all of these certifications are what I would call fiat certifications. In other words, they're like fiat money, right? Money used to be backed with gold or other precious metals, and at that point it was so-called hard money. It was tied to a specific commodity, right? And now, lately, what you have are these reserve bank notes pretty much around the world. That's fiat money. It's valuable because somebody says it's valuable, right? Some central banker. Well, it's exactly the same situation with these certifications. These are connected to testing reality because somebody says they are. So you need to really look at who are the people that came up with this syllabus, what's their experience, what's their background, how does this connect to value. You should be able to trace the key learning objectives in the body of knowledge or syllabus back to the skills that we were just talking about. And if a lot of those don't trace back to those skills, then guess what? There's not a lot of value, because people are learning things that are not connected to things that they're actually going to need in the day-to-day work. So I'd encourage you to go through that exercise when you're deciding which certifications to look at and which ones not to look at was part of a positive hiring recommendation. Check traceability of those learning objectives in the syllabi back to the skills of your task analysis yielded. If you're doing international work, and geez, these days who's not, in some sort of distributed working environment, then internationalism of the program is a consideration. Can you find people with that same certification everywhere? Of course, acceptance by colleagues and companies and so forth is something to look at. And then finally, make sure that you consider the exam process. How does somebody actually take the exam? How are the exam questions created and so forth? Because if you're going to rely to some extent on somebody having a certification, remember that certification, is based on them passing an exam, and so your confidence in them having a set of skills based on that certification really grows out of how good is the exam. So spend some time looking at these things. We've seen, again, I'm on the ISTQB board, and I've been an executive officer and so forth. I'm a huge fan of it, but again, skepticism is appropriate on your part. You should look at these things and ask questions about all the certifications. Don't just say, oh, yeah, the guy's a certified tester, let's hire him, because that's the beginning of a hiring mistake if you rely entirely